Grandpa Ned had survived the Great Depression, 2 wars, and 53 years of marriage to the toughest woman in 3 counties. He'd built his construction company from nothing, raised 4 kids in a 2-bedroom house, and never once asked for a handout. But standing in my backyard at the annual family barbecue, watching his grandson, my son Marcus, smirk while demanding I pay $8,800 in rent or move out of my own house, something in the old man's weathered face shifted. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth, a piece of my famous brisket forgotten. The usual twinkle in his ice-blue eyes went cold as January steel. "Boy," he said quietly, his voice cutting through the laughter and chatter like a knife, "I think it's time someone taught you what owning something actually means." The entire backyard went silent. The story. I should have seen it coming, really. The signs had been there for months, maybe even years, but like most parents, I'd convinced myself that my son's entitlement was just a phase, something he'd grow out of once he experienced the real world. I was wrong, dead wrong. It was the 3rd Saturday in July, one of those perfect summer days where the sky stretches endlessly blue and the air smells like cut grass and promise. My wife Sarah and I had been hosting the family barbecue for 15 years, ever since we'd bought this 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs. It was our tradition, our way of keeping the family connected despite everyone's busy lives. Marcus had turned 26 that spring. He'd graduated from college 4 years earlier with a business degree and what I'd thought were solid prospects. But somewhere between his diploma and his first real job, something had curdled in my son. He'd bounced between 3 positions, each time convinced his bosses were idiots who didn't recognize his genius. He'd moved back home, temporarily, 18 months ago, transforming our guest room into what he called his executive suite. The temporary arrangement had become permanent, and my gentle suggestions about finding his own place were met with eye rolls and lectures about the economy and predatory landlords and how things are different now, Dad. I'd let it slide. God help me, I'd let it all slide. The barbecue was in full swing when it happened. My brother Tom was manning the grill, my sister Rachel was setting up the dessert table, and the kids, ranging from toddlers to teenagers, were running through the sprinkler in the side yard. Grandpa Ned had claimed his usual spot in the shade, holding court from his lawn chair like the patriarch he was. At 84, Ned was still sharp as a tack, though his body had finally started betraying him. His hands, once strong enough to swing a hammer for 12 hours straight, now trembled slightly when he held his coffee cup. But his mind, crystal clear, he'd been watching Marcus all afternoon with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sarah had just brought out the potato salad when Marcus emerged from the house, phone glued to his ear as usual. He was dressed in expensive athleisure wear, $200 joggers, and a designer hoodie that I suspected I'd paid for, though I'd stopped checking the credit card statements months ago to preserve my sanity. He ended his call and grabbed a plate, piling it high with food without so much as a thank you to his uncle who'd spent the last hour perfecting those ribs. Then he dropped into the chair next to mine with the heavy sigh of someone deeply burdened by existence. "This housing market is absolutely insane," he announced to no one in particular. "My buddy Derek just got quoted $3,200 for a 1-bedroom in the city. A 1-bedroom, it's criminal." My sister Rachel, ever the peacemaker, nodded sympathetically. "It is rough out there. We were lucky to buy when we did." "Lucky?" Marcus scoffed. "Maury, like you're part of the problem. Your generation hoarded all the affordable housing, and now people my age can't get a foothold anywhere." I felt Sarah stiffen beside me, but I put a hand on her knee. "Not worth it, not today." But Marcus wasn't done. He never was. "Actually, Dad, I've been meaning to talk to you about that." He said it casually, spearing a piece of brisket like he was discussing the weather. "I've been doing some research, and I think we need to formalize our arrangement." "What arrangement?" I asked, though a cold feeling was already settling in my stomach. "My living situation. I'm essentially renting the guest room, right? Well, I looked up comparable rooms in this area, and the going rate is about $1,200 a month. But obviously, I have access to the whole house, kitchen, living room, laundry, so really, it's more like a 1-bedroom apartment." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. Those go for around $2,800 in this zip code. The conversations around us had started to die down. People were listening now, though pretending not to. Marcus, Sarah said carefully, you're not paying rent, you're our son. You're staying with us while you get back on your feet. He waved his hand dismissively. Right, exactly, which is why I'm not going to charge you the full market rate. The word charge hung in the air like smoke. I'm sorry, I said slowly. Did you just say charge US? Well, yeah, Marcus looked at me like I was being deliberately dense. I've been thinking about my future, about building wealth. This house is sitting on a quarter-acre lot in a prime location. The property value has gone up, 30% since you bought it? 37%, I said automatically, because I'd just gotten the new assessment. 37, see, that's passive wealth accumulation. You're literally making money just by existing in this space. He leaned forward, his eyes bright with the fervor of someone who'd watched too many finance bros on YouTube. But I'm not benefiting from that at all. So I figured, why not make this official? You transfer the house into my name, you know, estate planning, avoid probate and all that, and you can keep living here. I'll only charge you $8,800 a month, which is honestly below market for a house this size. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear Mrs. Patterson's wind chimes 3 houses down. You want us, Sarah said, her voice dangerously quiet, to give you our house and then pay you $8,800 a month to live in it. When you say it like that, it sounds bad, Marcus said, actually sounding wounded. I'm trying to set up a mutually beneficial arrangement here. You get to stay in your home, I start building my investment portfolio. Win-win, he shrugged. And honestly, if you don't like it, you could always downsize. There are some nice senior apartments over by. Boys! The single word came from Grandpa Ned, but it carried the weight of 84 years of hardened wisdom and exactly 0 tolerance for nonsense. Marcus turned, and I watched his confident smirk falter just slightly. Even entitled millennials knew not to cross Ned Morrison. I think it's time, Ned said, setting down his plate with deliberate care, that someone taught you what owning something actually means. Grandpa, with all respect, the economic landscape has completely changed since your... Shut your mouth when I'm talking. Marcus's jaw clicked shut. Around the yard, I saw my siblings trying to hide smiles. No one talked to Ned Morrison like that, not even his own children, and certainly not his grandchildren. Ned pushed himself up from his chair, waving off my brother Tom's attempt to help. He walked over to where Marcus sat, each step deliberate despite the tremor in his hands. You think you understand real estate, investment, building wealth? Ned's voice was quiet, but everyone was straining to hear. Let me tell you a story about your grandfather and what it actually takes to own something. He looked at me. Daniel, you got any beer left? In the cooler, Dad. Good, everyone grab a drink and settle in, because young Marcus here is going to get an education. I'd heard some of Grandpa Ned's stories before, but never quite like this, never with this edge. It was 1959, he began, settling back into his chair while the family gathered closer. I was 23 years old, married to your Grandma Betty for exactly 8 months, and she was pregnant with your Uncle Tom. I was working construction for a man named Harold Winters, making $1.85 an hour when I could get the hours. Marcus opened his mouth, probably to point out that $1.85 in 1959 was worth more than it sounded, but Ned's look silenced him. Betty and I were living in a one-room apartment above a butcher shop, and I mean one room, Marcus. One, we had a bed, a hot plate, and a bathroom we shared with 3 other families. In the summer, the smell from the shop below would make Betty so sick she couldn't eat. In the winter, we'd wake up with ice on the inside of the windows. He took a sip of his beer, his eyes distant. I wanted to give her better, wanted to give our baby better, so I started saving. Every single paycheck, I'd take out exactly what we needed for rent and food, and the rest went into a coffee can I kept hidden behind the toilet tank. 23 cents here, 50 cents there, sometimes nothing at all if work was slow. How long did it take you to save up? My niece Amy asked. She was 16, and I could see her doing the math in her head. 4 years, Ned said. 4 years of Betty wearing the same 3 dresses. 4 years of me walking 5 miles to work because bus fare was 15 cents. 4 years of eating potatoes and day-old bread and telling ourselves it was temporary. He looked at Marcus. You know what I did for fun in those 4 years? Nothing. No movies, no restaurants, no new clothes unless something literally had holes in it. Betty's wedding ring, I bought it from a pawn shop for $12 and she wore it proudly because it meant something. I glanced at Marcus, who was studying his expensive sneakers. In 1963, I finally had enough for a down payment on a lot. Not a house, mind you, just the lot. It was a half-acre of scrubland 20 minutes outside of town, and the only reason I could afford it was because nobody else wanted it. The soil was mostly clay, there was no water hookup, and the access road was so bad you needed a truck just to get there. But you saw the potential, Rachel said softly. I saw the only thing I could afford, Ned corrected. Potential had nothing to do with it. It was what I could buy with $800 and a handshake. He shifted in his chair, and I saw him wince. His hip had been bothering him lately. I spent the next 2 years building a house on that lot, and when I say I built it, I mean I built every damn piece of it myself. I'd work my regular job from 6 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, then drive out to that lot and work until dark. Weekends, I'd be there from sunrise to sunset. You dug the foundation by hand, didn't you? Tom said. He'd heard this part before. Damn right I did. 64 holes for the pier and beam foundation, each one 3 feet deep, all dug with a post-hole digger in that clay soil. Took me 3 months. Your grandma was 8 months pregnant with your Aunt Linda by the time I finished, and I remember her bringing me water and sandwiches, sitting there on the tailgate of our borrowed truck, crying because she was scared the baby would come before we had a real home. The image hung in the air. Sarah was wiping her eyes, and even Marcus looked uncomfortable. I framed that house with used lumber I bought from demolition sites. I wired it myself, reading books from the library because we couldn't afford an electrician. I plumbed it with pipes I'd salvaged from an old building downtown. The windows, second-hand, the doors, painted and repainted cast-offs. The only thing I paid full price for was the roof, because I'd be damned if my family was going to live under something that leaked. When did you finally move in? Amy asked. January 1966. Betty was pregnant again, that would be your Aunt Rachel, and we had 2 kids under 3. That house was 900 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen-living room combo. We didn't have heat the first winter because I couldn't afford the furnace yet, so we all slept in 1 bedroom with a kerosene heater. He paused, making sure Marcus was listening. And you know what? It was ours, not the bank's. I'd paid for it in cash as I built it, not a landlord's. Ours. We owned every nail, every board, every square inch of that property. And that feeling, Marcus, that feeling of knowing your family had a place that nobody could take away, you can't buy that with your daddy's credit card. The dig landed, and Marcus flushed. Over the next 30 years, I expanded that house room by room. Every time we saved enough, I'd add on an extra bedroom when your Uncle Tom needed his own space, a real dining room when Rachel was in high school and wanted to have friends over, a workshop in the garage when the kids were grown. That house grew with our family, and every single addition represented months or years of sacrifice. Ned's voice grew harder. But here's what you need to understand about ownership, about what it really means to have something of value. It's not just about the money you put in. It's about the sweat equity, the literal blood, and yes, I bled on that property more times than I can count. It's about the choices you make, the things you give up, the discipline to say no to what you want now for what you need later. He leaned forward, fixing Marcus with a stare that could cut glass. You want your father to hand you this house? Fine, let's talk about what that actually means. This house, your father bought it 15 years ago for $285,000. You know how much he put down? Marcus shook his head. 20%. That's $57,000 in cash, saved over 7 years while he and your mother lived in a townhouse half this size. Then he's been paying the mortgage every month since. You know what that is? Principal, interest, property taxes, insurance, probably around $3,200 a month, every month for 15 years. Rain or shine, sick or healthy, that bill comes due. I nodded. He was pretty close to the actual number. And that's just the mortgage, Ned continued. Your father has put in a new roof that was $12,000, new HVAC system $8,000. He's replaced the deck, remodeled the kitchen, fixed the foundation when water damage threatened the south wall. Add it all up, and your father has probably put close to $700,000 into this property over 15 years. Marcus was doing the math now, and I could see the number rattling him. But let's say your father was crazy enough to do what you asked. Let's say he signed over the deed to you right now, free and clear. You know what happens tomorrow. I'd be a homeowner, Marcus said, but his voice was uncertain now. You'd be responsible, Ned corrected. Responsible for every single thing that goes wrong. The water heater breaks, that's $1,200 on you. Termites, could be $3,000 for treatment. Property taxes, about $6,800 a year in this county. Insurance, another $2,400 annually. And God forbid something major goes wrong, roof damage, foundation issues, a tree falls through the living room. You're looking at tens of thousands of dollars you need to have ready at a moment's notice. He let that sink in. You think you're ready for that kind of responsibility? You, who can't be bothered to take out the trash without your mother asking 3 times. You, who have gone through 3 jobs in 4 years because they weren't fulfilling enough. You're going to handle emergency repairs at 2 in the morning when a pipe bursts. I could hire people, Marcus started. With what money? Ned's question was sharp. You're not working right now, are you? Marcus's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, so let me make sure I understand your plan. You want your father to give you an asset worth about $750,000, which he spent 15 years paying for and maintaining. Then you want him to pay you $8,800 a month. That's $105,600 a year to live in the house he bought and paid for. And what exactly are you bringing to this arrangement? What's your contribution? I'd be taking on the property, the liability. The property your father already owns, the liability he's already managing. Boy, that's not business, that's not investment, that's theft with extra steps. The word theft hit like a slap. Marcus jerked back, and I saw real shame flicker across his face for the first time. Let me tell you what real investment looks like, Ned said, his voice gentler now but no less firm. When Tom wanted to buy his first house, you know what I did? I didn't give it to him. I helped him make a budget, helped him cut his expenses, taught him how to save. When he finally had enough for a down payment, I went to the bank with him, helped him understand the mortgage terms, made sure he wasn't getting screwed. Tom nodded, remembering. Same with your Aunt Linda, your Aunt Rachel, and your father. I helped them all, but I never just handed them anything. You know why? Why? Marcus asked quietly. Because anything worth having is worth working for. If I'd just given your father this house, he wouldn't appreciate it the same way. He wouldn't understand the true cost of it. And more importantly, he wouldn't have developed the skills, the discipline, and the character that comes from earning something yourself. Ned stood up again, this time walking over to place his hand on my shoulder. Your father is a good man because he learned to work for what he has. He learned to sacrifice. He learned that sometimes you eat ramen for a month because the car needs new brakes, and you learn to be okay with that because it's part of being responsible for your life and your family. He turned back to Marcus. Want to build wealth, real wealth? Start by getting a job and keeping it. Doesn't matter if it's your dream job, there's no such thing anyway. Get a job, show up on time, work hard, save your money, move into a place you can afford even if it's small or not in the perfect location. Learn to live on less than you make. Build your credit, make a budget and stick to it. Those are the foundations of wealth, Marcus, not schemes, not demanding your parents hand you what they spent decades building. The silence stretched out. Marcus was staring at his hands, and I could see his jaw working. I thought, he started, then stopped. I thought I was being smart, All these people online, they talk about leveraging assets, about passive income, about how our generation got screwed, and we need to be creative. Creative is fine, Ned interrupted. Entitled is not. There's a difference between being entrepreneurial and being a con artist, even if you're trying to con your own family. That landed hard. Marcus's face crumpled slightly, and suddenly he looked less like the cocky 26-year-old and more like the little boy I used to read bedtime stories to. I'm scared, he admitted, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I'm scared I'll never be able to afford anything, that I'll never have what you guys have. Everything is so expensive, and I feel like I'm already behind, and I don't know how to catch up. The confession changed the energy in the yard. This was the truth under all the bravado, all the entitlement. Fear. Sarah moved before I could, crossing to Marcus and pulling him into a hug. He resisted for a second, then collapsed into it, and I realized with a start that my son was crying. I know it's scary, Sarah said softly, but baby, the answer isn't to take shortcuts or expect us to solve it for you. The answer is to do the hard work. Ned lowered himself back into his chair, and his expression had softened. Marcus, look at me. My son raised his head, tears streaking his face. The world is different now. I'm not going to tell you it isn't. Things cost more, wages haven't kept up, and yeah, your generation got dealt a tougher hand in some ways. But you know what hasn't changed? The fundamental truth that anything worth having requires work, sacrifice, and time. There are no shortcuts that don't come with a cost. He paused, then smiled slightly. You want to know a secret? I was scared too, scared every day for years. Scared I couldn't provide for my family, scared I'd fail, scared that one bad break would send us right back to that room above the butcher shop. But I didn't let that fear make me helpless. I let it motivate me. Marcus wiped his face with his sleeve. Here's what we're going to do, Ned said, looking at me for confirmation. I nodded. Starting Monday, you're going to get a job. Any job. I don't care if it's stocking shelves or serving coffee. You're going to work 40 hours a week minimum. In the evenings and weekends, you're going to work with me. Work with you doing what? Marcus asked. I've still got the rental property on Oak Street. Needs a full renovation before I can rent it out again. You're going to help me fix it up. I'll teach you what I can, basic repairs, maintenance, how to actually take care of a property. In exchange, when we rent it out, you'll get 10% of the rental income for the first year as payment for your work. Marcus blinked. Really? Really, but you've got to actually work. Show up on time, do what I tell you, learn the right way to do things. Can you handle that? Yes, sir, Marcus said, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I heard genuine respect in his voice. Good, and while you're working, you're going to save. 50% of every paycheck goes into a savings account. Your mother and I will work out a reasonable amount for rent, real rent, not this insane number you pulled out of thin air, and you'll pay that. The rest you can use for your expenses. In a year, we'll see where you are. I saw the calculation in Marcus's eyes, the realization that this was going to be hard. But I also saw something else. Relief. Relief that someone had finally given him a structure, a path forward that didn't involve impossible choices or magical thinking. Okay, he said, then looking at me and Sarah, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking like someone who's scared and doesn't know how to fix it, I said, pulling him into a hug. But we're going to figure it out, together, the right way. The tension that had gripped the backyard finally released, and conversations started up again. But they were different now, quieter, more thoughtful. Later, after the last guests had left, and Marcus had gone inside, Ned and I sat on the back porch, watching the fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. You think it'll stick? I asked. Maybe, maybe not, but at least he knows now, knows what real work looks like, knows that his old grandpa isn't going to let him turn into one of these entitled jackasses who think the world owes them something. Thank you, I said, for saying what I should have said months ago. Ned shrugged. That's what grandfathers are for. We get to be the hardasses because we don't have to live with them every day. He grinned. But you're going to have to follow through, make him pay that rent, make him save. Don't let him slip back into old habits. I won't, I promised. Good, because that boy has potential. Saw it when he was little, still see it now. He just needs to learn that potential doesn't mean a damn thing without work to back it up. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge. Dad. Yes. That story about building your first house, I've heard it before, but never quite like that. Was it really as hard as you made it sound? Ned laughed, a dry sound. Harder. I left out the parts about the injuries, the times I thought I'd never finish, the fights your grandma and I had about money. But Marcus didn't need to hear all that. He just needed to understand that nothing worthwhile comes easy. He stood up slowly, his joints creaking. I'm heading home, but Daniel, you're a good father, don't second-guess yourself too much. Every kid goes through something like this. The question is whether they come out the other side better or bitter. Marcus, I think he's going to come out better. I hoped he was right. 3 months later, Marcus was still working at the grocery store. He'd also put in over 100 hours on Grandpa Ned's rental property, learning to patch drywall, fix plumbing, and handle basic electrical work. The transformation wasn't dramatic. He still had his moments of frustration and entitlement, but it was real. I found him one Saturday evening, sitting at the kitchen table with a spreadsheet open on his laptop, carefully tracking his expenses and savings. He'd saved almost $4,000. Hey Dad, he said, not looking up. Quick question. Grandpa says I should start looking at houses, even though I can't afford one yet. Says it helps to know what I'm working toward. You want to come with me to some open houses next weekend? I sat down across from him, my heart full. Yeah, son, I'd like that a lot. And in that moment, I thought about Grandpa Ned, about the lessons that get passed down through generations, about the difference between giving someone everything and teaching them how to earn anything. The rent was never $8,800, but the education Marcus got that day, priceless.